Kintaro Kusayamasaku. There once was a strong child named Kintaro. He was born deep in the mountains of Sagami and lived with his mother, Yamamba. Kintaro was born very strong. By the time he was 7 or 8, he could lift a millstone or a fur bale with ease. He could wrestle most adults and not lose. When he had no more opponents in the neighborhood, he became bored. Kintaro ran around the forest all day long, carrying a big stick that his mother had given him. He would cut down the biggest cedar trees and pine trees he could find, and he would cut down big cedar trees and pine trees. One day, he went deep into the forest. I was chopping down a big tree as usual. A big bear came out of the tree. The bear looked at me with wide eyes. "Who is it that is destroying my forest?" Kintaro said. "How can you be a bear and not know who Kintaro is?" He threw down his masuri and suddenly grappled with the bear. Then he threw him to the ground with a thud with his footprints. Puma put his hands on the ground in parallel. Puma apologized and became Kintaro's retainer. Kintaro's retainer. After that, rabbits, monkeys, and deer followed in droves. Kintaro said, "Kintaro-zen, please make me your retainer too." Kintaro nodded his head and said. Kintaro nodded his head and made them all his guests. Every morning Kintaro brought his mother a lot of rice balls. Kintaro's mother would make him lots of rice balls. Kintaro would go out into the forest. Kintaro would whistle and call out, "Come on, come on, come on, come on." And out came the bears and the deer and the monkeys and the rabbits and all sorts of things. Kintaro roamed around the mountain with these retainers, Nichinichi Nichinichi. One day, walking along the path, eventually they came to a place where there was soft grass, and they all put their feet out and lay down on the grass. It felt so good to lay down. Kintaro said, "Go ahead and wrestle, and as a reward," Kintaro said, "I'll give you these rice balls as a reward." With shaggy hands, he dug out the ground and made a ring. First, the monkey and the rabbit worked together, and then the deer got into the act. The hare caught the monkey's tail and tried to carry it out of the ring. The monkey was so frustrated. He grabbed the hare's long ears and yanked on them. The rabbit was in pain, so there was no contest, and neither rabbit got a prize. This time, the hare became the joji, and the deer and the bear fought. The deer was quickly overturned by the bear, antlers and all. Kintaro clapped his hands, saying it was funny, funny. Finally, the bout was over. Kintaro stood in the middle of the ring. Kintaro stood there in the middle of the ring and spread out his arms, saying, "Come on, let's see what you can do." Then a rabbit, a monkey, a deer, and, last but not least, a bear. But they were all rolled away from him. What a weakling! Kintaro told him to come at them all at once. The rabbit took hold of the rabbit's leg, and the monkey put his hand on the bear's neck in frustration, and all hell broke loose. And the deer pushed at his waist, and the bear clutched his chest. They all tried to knock Kintaro down, but they just couldn't do it. But they just couldn't get him down. Kintaro was so frustrated that he swung his body around and around. And then the rabbit, the monkey, and the bear all fell to the ground at once. And the bear, too. They all rolled out of the ring, and all of them fell out of the ring at once. Everyone was rubbing their backs and rubbing their shoulders, and rubbing his shoulders. "Kintaro, you poor thing, you've lost to me," so I'm going to share with you. He lined up the rabbits, monkeys, deer, and bears in a circle around him. I sat in the middle, and we shared the diaper and ate it together. After a while, Kintaro said, "Oh, that was good." Then he said, "Let's go home." And he took everyone home again. On the way back, they played running games in the forest and playing tag on the rocks. They came to the edge of a big valley. The water was gurgling and flowing very fast, but unfortunately, there was no bridge. Everyone said, "What should we do?" Kintaro looked around with a nonchalant look on his face and said, "What do you care?" Kintaro looked around with a nonchalant look on his face. Just on the bank of the river stood a huge cedar tree. A big cedar tree stood on the bank of the river. Kintaro threw away Masakari and suddenly put his hands on the cedar tree. Then he pushed a couple of times, and there was a terrible sound, and the tree fell so heavily on the river that a great bridge was formed. Kintaro again carried Masakari on his shoulders and went across first. Everyone looked at each other and whispered to each other, "You are naturally very strong." A lumberjack was hiding on a rock over there, watching the scene. He saw Kintaro carelessly push down a large tree. He rolled his eyes and wondered where this mysterious child came from. "I wondered where he came from," he said to himself. Then he got up and quietly followed in Kintaro's footsteps, leaving the rabbit and the bear behind. Kintaro was back on his own again, striding lightly across the valley and over the cliffs. Kintaro strode lightly across valleys and over cliffs and entered a house deep in the mountains. White clouds were welling up all around. The lumberjack then finally wriggled his way through the roots of the trees. Caught in the corner of a rock, the lumberjack followed him. When they finally reached the front of the house, the woodcutter looked inside. Kintaro was sitting in front of the hearth. Kintaro was sitting in front of the hearth, eagerly telling his mother, Yamamba, the story of how he wrestled with bears and deer. His mother smiled and listened with amusement. At that moment, the woodcutter snuck out and stuck his head out of the window. Here, little boy. Now let's wrestle with your uncle," he said as he strode in. And suddenly he put out his hairy hand in front of Kintaro. Yamamba looked at him strangely, but Kintaro was amused. "Oh, I'll take a picture of it," he said, and immediately put out his shaggy, cute hand. So the two of them pushed each other around for a while, making bright red faces. Then the woodcutter suddenly said, "Let's go." The woodcutter suddenly said, "Let's go." Then he sat down again, bowed politely to Yamamba. "I'm sorry for interrupting." "I'm sorry for interrupting, sir. I saw the boy push over a large cedar tree by the stream. I was so surprised that I followed him here. Now he's arm wrestling again, and I'm amazed at how strong he is. This boy is going to be a great volunteer." Now he turned to Kintaro and said, "What do you say? Boy, go to the capital and become a samurai?" "I want to go to the capital and become a samurai." Kintaro's eyes lit up. Kintaro's eyes twinkled and he said, "Oh, I hope I can become a samurai. This woodcutter I showed you. I am actually Sadamitsu Emamizu, the greatest general in Japan. He was a retainer of the famous Minamoto no Reiko, the greatest general in Japan. He was sent by his master to find a strong samurai. He roamed all over Japan like this." Yamamba was delighted to hear that. In fact, her late father was a samurai with the noble family name of Sakata. For some reason, he is buried in the mountains. If only there were a better opportunity. I would like to take him back to the capital one day and make him a samurai. I had hoped to make him a samurai and allow him to carry on the family name. If that's the case, I'm just a naughty boy, as you can see. I would be grateful for your kindness, he said, sounding very happy. Kintaro was happy to hear what they said. I'm going to be a samurai. Kintaro was so happy to hear that Sadamitsu of Amamitsu would finally take him to the capital. When he heard that Kintaro was finally going to the capital, the bears, deer, monkeys, and rabbits all came to say good day. Kintaro patted them on the head and told them to play together in peace. Everyone misses Kintaro. Kintaro said, "Please hurry up and become a great general and show your face to us again." Kintaro said, "Please become a great general soon and let me see your face again and less." Kintaro put his hand in front of his mother. Kintaro put his hand in front of his mother and said, "Goodbye, mother." And he followed Sadamitsu out like the man he was. Then, after many, many days, Sadamitsu took Kintaro back to the capital. Then he went to Reiko's house. Deep in the Ashigara Mountains, I found this child. Kintaro Reiko has seen him. "Oh, this is a rare, strong-looking child," said Trice, rubbing Kintaro's head. "But the name Kintaro is not right for a samurai. If your father is Sekata, you may call yourself Kintoki of Sekata from now on." So Kintaro took the name Kintoki of Sekata and became Reiko's retainer. And when he grew up, he became a great samurai.